really excited about the opportunity to share this with you guys tonight. Can I get a show of hands just real quick, because I like this to be interactive and as informal as possible. How many of you guys have heard of TNI before? Fabulous. Okay, quite a few. All right, one more question, and there is no wrong answer. The only right answer is your honest opinion. How many of you would prefer really technical language as it relates to the science tonight? Like one hand. Okay, perfect. No, that's okay. I'm going to pepper it in, but that helps me understand where to go with this, because we can get super technical and super detailed, but I want to make sure that it's applicable to everybody. Hi, hello, I see you on the thing. Okay. So tonight I want to talk about the science and the practical application of targeted nutritional intervention. A little bit about myself. I do have a Bachelor of Science in Molecular Biology and a minor in Chemistry. I love science, health, and nutrition, and becoming a mother really drove me to start learning more about health and wellness, and really about taking ownership of our health decisions. I spent about a decade in the lab as a scientist, and then went on to become a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, holistic health practitioner, certified dietary supplement specialist, and functional nutrition coach. All of that to just say I'm working to always stay learning so that I can bring value to you guys. Credentials are not everything. There's really smart people who have no credentials, and people with a lot of credentials that kind of have like a, poor bedside manner or lack of common sense and things like that. But that's just to show you what I'm working on behind the scenes. So starting out, let's talk about genetics, and we have to talk about this because it lays the foundation for what we're doing with TNI. So I'm going to give you some details. All of our DNA, we were familiar with chromosomes in this group, I'm sure, but all of those chromosomes can be broken down into the tiniest units called nucleotides. Those are like the letters. If we want to compare this to like the alphabet and letters, becoming words, becoming sentences, becoming chapters, becoming books, and I'll help you understand that. Nucleotides are like the letters. And the main point with that is they're the tiniest building block there in our DNA. The nucleotides come together in specific groupings. A pairs with T, C pairs with G, and they form a chemical bond, and they kind of create that ladder-like structure that we see, and I'm going to show you a picture just after the slide to show you that. Those base pairs create little words. Then next, when we put a group of base pairs together, we start to create genes. Okay, those are like the words. So base pairs are like the letters, genes are like the words, and we are learning more and more all of the time about certain genes and how they're associated with certain bodily functions. From something as trivial as our hair color and our eye color to something as serious as cardiac function and risk of cancer, and you name it. Like, we can go down the list. Those genes are packaged together on what's called a chromosome, and then those chromosomes get used through the process of what's called transcription and translation, and those processes create proteins. Those proteins can build your muscles, yes, but they create everything in your body. Every cell and tissue and organ in your body is created from the information stored in your DNA, and the fact that our body has cell machinery essentially to go through and read that. So if you'll switch to the next slide, we can see this. So here we see on the left the nucleotides and the base pairs paired together. That's kind of like the simple ladder structure. And then that starts to get wound around these little blue things called histones, and it basically helps keep like the trillions and trillions of feet of DNA in our body organized, right? How many of you have ever flown a kite and tried to like wrap up the string again? You wrap it around something to organize it and keep it from getting all tangled up. Our body does the same thing. It's very detailed, it's organized on purpose. And the next picture, which I think is so cool, is like a three-dimensional image of an enzyme called DNA transcriptase. And what it's doing is, the purple line that you see there is actually the DNA. Okay, it's the DNA strand. And coming out kind of like towards the bottom left, you see the red strand, that's RNA. Okay, so our body takes the DNA, and through the transcriptase, it unzips it, reads one side, and creates a matching RNA. Because remember, A pairs with T, C pairs with G, and so our body knows what to put together. And then it'll take that red strand of RNA off to another piece of cellular machinery and then go create the proteins or the products, the enzymes that go around the body and do work. They build cells, they do all kinds of things in the body that keep us going. So just to show you kind of like an image of what that actually looks like on a cellular level, molecular level really. So trisomy 21 happens when we get an extra copy of the 21st chromosome. And based on everything I just told you, where genes create gene products, and those gene products go do work in the body. When we have an extra chromosome with multiple extra genes that are being expressed and creating those products, it leads to what I call metabolic chaos. So, which is stress and dysfunction, right? It's kind of like making a cake and adding too much sugar or too much salt or not enough milk or, fill in the blank. It doesn't taste as good. And so when we have that genetic overexpression, it creates metabolic chaos. And we see that in the form of digestive dysfunction. We see that in the form of reduced endurance, for example. Their energy production is impacted. So many things are impacted. Metabolic and biochemical chaos really is resulting. And that's where TNI comes in. So on the next slide, we can see a list of some of these genetic overexpression effects. And again, I know I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know with this list, right? So many of us have experienced open heart surgery or other things like that. But the things that are characteristic for our loved ones with Down syndrome are the direct result of genetic overexpression. So narrow airways and ear canals, changes to bone structure, delayed dentition, impaired cognition, impaired immune function and digestive function, low muscle tone, increased risk of congenital defects, infantile spasms and leukemia, as well as Alzheimer's and regression. And so, some of these are really serious. And I don't know about you, but if I have the opportunity to improve the health of my child, whether with something they're dealing with acutely right now, or with the opportunity to prevent something more serious in the future, I want to take that, right? That looks like fresh air and sunshine, that looks like drinking clean water and eating healthy foods, but for us that also means TNI. That's just one of the things that we include in that process. So how do we get there? How do we get there? We get there through the principles of epigenetics and nutrigenomics, which means we are born with the genes and the chromosomes that we have. We can't change that. But we can change how they're used. Not all of our genes are being used at the same time. Some of them don't turn on until we're older, like the gene that tells your hair to turn gray, right? That's not on right now for some of us. For me, it's turning on. But that gene expression can be changed. That's why diet and lifestyle factors are definitely associated with chronic illness. Let's just take a step back from Down syndrome and just talk about health in general. 70% of chronic illnesses and diseases are directly associated with diet and lifestyle. And that's because of epigenetics. So what we do with our food, with our movement, with our stress levels, with our stress management, all of that impacts how our genes are used. And so to bring it back to Down syndrome and TNI, here are a few of those principles that we're working with strategically with some of these supplements. Genes can be upregulated. That means we can send a signal to the body that says, hey, I need more of this protein, turn this gene on. I want that little orange blob to come through my DNA and read it and create that protein more often. When you go to the gym and you challenge your muscles, your body's turning on genes that build muscle and bone, which is really great. So we've got upregulation. We also have inhibition, which is the same but in reverse. You can be like, please no more of this. I don't need any more oxidative stress. I don't need more sugar in my blood right now. I don't need any more. Let's let's create some insulin. We also have antagonists. These block the activity of the protein or gene product. So if we can't directly influence the expression of the gene itself, we can run interference with the gene product or the enzyme or whatever's created because of the gene being expressed. Does that make sense? Everybody following? So it's like we can interfere with that by either enhancing the activity of the gene product or inhibiting it, or something else to try to restore balance. And I'm going to show you what I mean here in just a second. Next slide, please. All right, so these are some of the genes specifically associated with the Down syndrome critical region on the 21st chromosome. That's a lot of words to say. On that third copy, there are certain genes that are consistently overexpressed in a large percentage of people with Down syndrome. How much they're expressed and how often is unique to each individual, but especially in the Down syndrome critical region, there's pretty good data that shows it's very consistent across the board. And some of those genes are SOD1. This is an antioxidant gene. So at first glance, if you know anything about antioxidants and that they're good for your health, you might think it might be good to have more of it. But the problem is when we have extra SOD1 expression, it leads to a buildup of the intermediate product because the rest of the pathway is not also upregulated. The intermediate product of SOD1 is hydrogen peroxide. So, how many of you guys have put a hydrogen peroxide on a wound? Yes, everyone? Okay, we can picture that happening in our cells. How many of you were also told at some point, wait, don't use hydrogen peroxide on your wound because it'll damage the tissues? I'm not alone in that, right? Okay, so the same thing's happening inside the cells. A little bit's okay. Our body's generally pretty good at breaking it down quickly. The problem is when the front part of that process is going faster than the back end can handle. So with TNI, we are upregulating the production of the second half of that process to break down hydrogen peroxide, which are catalase and glutathione peroxidase. And I'm going to show you data to prove that I'm not just like saying this, like we have data on people with Down syndrome and using NuTriVene that shows that this is true. So I think that's really, really cool. But that helps to reduce the oxidative stress load. That right there is going to affect every cell, tissue, and organ in the body when we can reduce oxidative stress. RCAN1 is another gene, and it interacts with pathways that really impair immune function, neurogenesis, which is the development of neurons in the brain, new neurons, the brain's structure, so the way it's shaped, and can also lead to neurofibrillary tangles associated with Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so this one really plays a big role in brain health, cognition, and things like that. And we're able to target RCAN1 and the gene products with competition using PQQ and lycopene. Lycopene is like a very, I want you guys to know too, like you may not be familiar with PQQ, but these are like food-based products. These are either a food itself or an isolated compound coming from food, like lycopene, okay? Super safe. DIRC1 is involved with cell cycle control, and when it's not well managed or when it's overexpressed, we can see issues with neurons as well. And we target that with EGCG, which is an active compound in green tea extract. And there's a long history, you guys, long history of safe and effective use of green tea through like thousands of years of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. So I think it's really important. Again, I just love knowing we actually have a ton of safety information on this stuff. MicroRNA is one that's kind of interesting. It doesn't actually create a gene product itself. It goes back to the DNA and influences how that DNA transcriptase gets to use the DNA. So it alters gene expression on the DNA itself, okay? It's kind of like a feedback loop. And this influences the translation, which inhibits genetic expression, and that can lead to issues with autoimmune disease, a leaky blood-brain barrier, neuroinflammation, and underexpression of other genes that are important. So I hope you can see like the cascade of effects, right? Like they don't stay localized on the 21st chromosome. These effects, the stress and dysfunction starts to cascade into other, gene products from other chromosomes. All organ systems are impacted. And we're able to target microRNA 155 with resveratrol. It's a type of polyphenol. Again, it comes primarily from the skins of certain fruits and veggies. So pretty cool stuff. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay, now we're getting to the research. So this is the really cool part. There's a couple of different studies. This one is the Gelb study, and it was published in 2001. 38 patients with Down syndrome were treated apologies for that, were treated for an average of 21 months. Now, I don't know, how many of you guys here have ever tried to read the research and seen how long they usually follow people? It's usually not very long. And so I'm loving to see this study that follows people for 21 months. And it compared patients that received TNI directly to patients who did not. So we have a true controlled study. And then we compared the two. And what this shows us is that the bioavailability of nutrients is there. When you give your child NuTriVene-D, it's the multivitamin specially formulated for people with Down syndrome, those nutrients get into the bloodstream and are bioavailable, that's what that means, and they can go around the body and do work. They can go do good things in the body. Because not all supplements are that way. Some of them you can take and they're not effective at all. So this study shows us by looking at the blood test results that the nutrients get into the bloodstream and they have a positive impact on multiple blood markers. So if you look at the control group without TNI, their IgA, which is one of your main immune molecules, was only 52. In the group with TNI, their IgA was 180. And the normal range is 70 to 400. And I think we can all relate to struggling with immune function and how that can become a chronic stressor for the whole family unit. It impacts daily life, it impacts outings, it impacts school, it impacts so many things. And so I just love seeing the hard data here, that it benefits immune function in that way. Very concrete result right there. We also see selenium in people without the TNI was only 32, which is below the reference range. People with TNI, their selenium was 81, which is on the upper end of the range, which was actually really great. That's a really functionally optimal number. Selenium plays a really important role in thyroid function, among other things. And I know that, again, I hope you're starting to connect the dots as I'm talking, all these things that we hear so common, well, that's just Down syndrome, that's just Down syndrome, that's just something you're gonna have to deal with. And there's more to it, right? Well, it's not just Down syndrome, it's the genes, and there is something that we can do to help influence it. So this is one of the studies. On the next slide, we'll see the McGuid study. This was done in 2015, and what this did was it looked at kids before and after taking TNI themselves, so they were their own control. And this is a really powerful type of study when we're talking about biology, and there's so many variables and things like that. So when a person can be their own control and they are studied without the product, and then they do a washout period, they're studied with the product, this is really great. What I want to highlight on this one is they're actually looking at the gene expression with and without TNI, and I know this is a little small up here. I'm going to try my best to kind of orient you guys to what you're looking at. Okay, can most people see me if I look right here? In this top left box, we have SOD. That's that antioxidant gene that I was telling you is overexpressed and leads to an overproduction of hydrogen peroxide. In people with Down syndrome, we see that the amount of SOD is essentially doubled compared to people without Down syndrome. That's that tall black, yes, thank you, perfect. That's comparing people with Down syndrome to people without, so it's really doubled in people with Down syndrome. We're also looking at the next box over, that's catalase, that's one of the enzymes that breaks down hydrogen peroxide. It's about the same in people with and without Down syndrome. And then on the next box over, we see the glutathione peroxidase and transferases and things like that. And there's some small differences, but not major. And so looking down here, we're looking at just people with Down syndrome now, pre-supplement and post-supplement. So the pre-supplement is the black line, and post-supplement is the hash marks. So in people who took TNI, we were not able, unfortunately at this time, to target SOD1 expression directly. That's why we don't see a big shift here in SOD expression. But where we are able to target it is we're running interference on the product, on the hydrogen peroxide. We're able to effectively increase expression and production of catalase and glutathione peroxidase here. I hope you guys can see that, because it's nearly doubled, which would match then the SOD being doubled. So we've essentially restored balance in that metabolic pathway, which reduces the stress on the body, reduces the metabolic chaos in every cell, tissue, organ system in the body. Okay, and this is using NuTriVene-D. So I just think that's so amazing that we have this research on people with Down syndrome and NuTriVene and seeing directly what's actually happening on the inside. What happens when you start using it? We do have a lot of parents report very similar experiences when they get started on TNI, and I'd like to highlight some of those. Number one, improved immune function. And I do not believe that that is a placebo effect or like wishful thinking, because we just saw in the data their secretory IgA or their IgA is nearly doubled. So they're actually seeing that in real life translate into improved immune function. Parents often report that their kids are more alert and awake, so it's kind of like a light bulb goes off. I've heard many parents describe it that way. I've described it that way when I started using it for my son, or when I added subsequent steps of the protocol, and you'll hear from these two ladies about that. Improved cognition, communication, and response times. So we all, again, we're all familiar with this, but to see that light come on and see tangible differences, I personally have made changes or additions to the protocol, as in getting started on the next step. For example, I was able to add polyphenol, which contains resveratrol. I added a second dose, and like 2 or 3 days later, we were having our in-home occupational therapy session, and the therapist is like, wow, he's like really on today. Like he's just like, he's responding really quickly, his processing time went down, and the therapist was noticing, and that's not unheard of either. She didn't know what I was doing. Like she didn't know I made a change to the protocol. So again, it's not just wishful thinking or wanting to see what you want to see. This is a very common thing that happens. Improved physical coordination, balance, motor planning, stamina is another one. Improved muscle tone, sleep, and sleep apnea can be improved as well. Other ones, digestion, reduction in reflux, things like that. So really amazing things that we're actually seeing in real life. So here are some of the, this is about the lymphatic detox, yes. So there is another part of the protocol. We have kind of like the core protocol, and we also have what's called the lymphatic detox. Where do I begin? How many of you guys have heard of the lymphatic system? Raise your hands, please interact with me. Okay, thank you. Okay, you guys have heard of the lymphatic system. It runs alongside our circulatory system. It plays a big role in immune function, detox function, and things like that, right? And when it's stagnant, what happens? We get puffy, we get sore, we get lymph nodes that are issues, like not a good thing when that gets backed up. And I'm gonna age myself when I say this, but that's after I graduated from college and went through anatomy and physiology, so this wasn't in my textbook. So it just really excites me and it feels like a new discovery. In 2015, they discovered what's called the lymphatic system. And it's like the lymphatic system, but for your brain. And so what it does is very similar to the lymphatic system of the body. It helps to cleanse, nourish, and detoxify the brain, the central nervous system. The thing about the lymphatic system is that it's primarily active at night during N3 sleep, which is a very specific stage of deeper sleep. And so what's very common in our loved ones with Down syndrome is they don't have good sleep cycles. They don't have good quality sleep, which means their lymphatic system is impaired, which then in turn leads to, just like when our lymphatic system is backed up, it leads to a buildup of toxins, and it just impacts cognition, it impacts mood, it impacts everything, right? And so the lymphatic detox is designed to help activate that system, encourages proper sleep, but also directly kind of address the neurons, the tangles, all of those things that start to build up in there that can later cause problems like regression or Alzheimer's or really kind of any neurodegenerative issue for any of us. This is true for all of you. So if any of you in here are on night shift or are not sleeping well, like good quality, this is for you too. Like I hope you understand how important good quality rest is, and we have guided people through the lymphatic detox who don't have Down syndrome. I recommend it on a regular basis. Yeah, Christy, you do it? Yes. Christy does it. I've done it with him too. You've done it? Yeah. So it's great. Yeah. Okay, I'm loving this. So this is for everybody. Everybody can do this. This is also a great way, like if you're kind of new to supplements for your child and you're not sure about it, like, because how will they feel? Or maybe they can't tell me how they feel. This is a great thing to do alongside your child and be able to experience it for yourself. And kind of get a feel for how you feel on it, which can help you intuit or interpret what might be going on with them if they're not able to verbally tell you. This is the protocol at a glance. I know Sarah's going to go into more detail. I won't spend a lot of time on this. If you look at the numbers, that's 8 supplements. And what I want to say is I know that sounds like super overwhelming and you're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But it's really not. It's really not crazy. You climb a mountain one step at a time. And none of us would think twice about putting a variety of foods on our plate. In fact, if you're trying to eat a healthy diet, you're putting a variety of foods on your plate as possible, right? And why? Why are you doing that? You're doing that because of the nutrients that are in those foods. Those are the building blocks of your cells. And so in the same way, when we have a whole chromosome that's overexpressing and causing metabolic chaos, one change is meaningful, but there's a synergy that comes along with adding multiple inputs at a time. For example, you're trying to get more fit and healthy. If you start drinking more water, that's a great change. Will it be as impactful as also eating more vegetables and going to the gym and going to bed on time? No. Your trajectory is directly attached to the changes you're able to make. And so I just kind of wanted to give that kind of mental mindset shift maybe towards looking at these supplements and feeling afraid of the number of them. No, none of us are going to direct you to start all of them at one time. Never. We would never do that. You start one at a time, and they're going to talk to you about that. So here are some resources for you guys, some practical application. I highly recommend, if this is new to you or you need a refresher, go to the trisomy21research.org website, and there are lessons on TNI, and they're written to parents. There is technical language, but they also include videos and things that make it more easy to understand or visualize, which can be really helpful. You'll want to order your supplements from NuTriVene.com to get started, and they're also a fabulous resource. I don't know any other company that you can call and a real person will pick up the phone and have a conversation with you about questions or concerns. They also have a packet of information. I know that navigating supplements in a supplement protocol with maybe some of your doctors or specialists might be intimidating or a challenge. NuTriVene will send you for free a packet of information and research supporting the polyphenol support, the curcumin, and the NuTriVene-D. So then you get to walk in and not have to be the expert. You can say, here's this packet of research that I'm using that backs up what I'm using and why. I've done that with all of our doctors. They've all made copies, put it in Hunter's file, and been totally on board. So that's just a nice little, reduce the hurdle, right, of getting started. The Down Syndrome Optimal Health Strategies Facebook group is a wonderful place to come ask questions about TNI and really anything more naturally minded. If you have questions about any topic, we've had recent conversations about palate expansion and airways and any number of things, so that's a great resource. There are some also regression-specific resources. The TNI Restoring Hope Facebook group is specifically for people who are experiencing regression. And they also have a website. It's tnirestoringhope.webnode.com. .page. The TNI calculator can help you calculate your own doses. They'll go over that. But, do I have another slide after this? I think there might be. It's resources. Okay, so the main thing is there is science behind this protocol. There is research. And there are a lot of dots to connect between the research specifically in people with Down syndrome and also just the basic principles of epigenetics and nutrigenomics and how what we eat or the supplements we take influence genetic expression. So I hope this has helped you guys feel a bit more confident or in what we're doing or a bit more curious maybe. And I'd love to talk with any of you if you guys have any questions after. Hello. So I'm covering TNI in phases. I typically cover it in like phase 1 and a phase 2. So that's how I'm covering it today. You go to the next one. Okay, so my name is Sara Land. I typically do like TNI consults. I'm also an FDNP. And I'm most known for running the TNI beginners group. So with the SAC or the Scientific Advisory Committee with the Trisomy 21 Research Foundation, I've typically been in charge of educating parents on TNI. So I've run the TNI beginners group for, I think, 7 years now. So it's been quite a while. But I don't want to focus on me because it's not about me. I didn't do any of this, so if you go to the next slide. It's about who created it. The Trisomy 21 Research Foundation originally created the TNI protocol. There is a board of directors who oversees the TNI protocol. There's Dr. David Swinson, and he was the H.H. Dow Chair of Biochemistry for many years. He was originally involved in the Human Genome Project back in the 90s. So he's like the real true expert. He has a doctorate in biochemistry. Dixie did go back to school, so Dixie Lawrence, she's the mother of a child with Down syndrome who originally had the idea to do this. And she went back to school and did get a degree in biochemistry as well. And then there's Dr. J.P. Spurlock. And I love Dr. J.P. Spurlock. He always goes over my presentations and makes little notes and remove this and remove that. But he is a animal research scientist, basically. So he is very familiar with like the Down syndrome mouse model and things like that. He's worked for the CDC. He usually works for multiple different colleges at a time and does contracting for the CDC. That's a picture there of Dixie Lawrence. But there is a scientific advisory committee. There's a practitioner division, parent division, and things like that that advise on the TNI protocol, who have more access to these people to be able to ask questions and get research and give opinions on how things are happening and things like that. Next one. Thank you. So TNI phase 1. So there's no one that created or that decided to separate these into phases except for me. I went and talked to Dixie about separating it because I felt like parents are having a really hard time. This huge list of supplements and not knowing what was the most important and what was best and what's been around the longest and what has the most research. So I separated it to say, this is the most important. So if you go to the next one. So it all starts with NuTriVene. So there are 3 different versions of NuTriVene. It's called the NuTriVene-D antioxidant formula. It is the core of the protocol. It is the very first supplement that was created as part of the TNI protocol. There's the regular powder, the capsules, and there is the microencapsulated powder. All of them are pretty much exactly the same except for the version that they come in. So the regular powder is exactly as it sounds. It comes in a powder version, so you can mix it into something. The capsules comes in capsules for those who can swallow capsules, and the microencapsulated comes in a powder as well, but it is coated in a substance to decrease the flavor. So some parents do like that, but it cannot be put in a G tube. It cannot be put into a bottle or things like that. It will stop it. Can you hear the next one? So this is the list of the ingredients. So with you guys being so far away, you probably can't see all of the list of ingredients, but basically it is addresses all of the known nutrient deficiencies seen in a majority of blood work. The original blood work that was done on over 4,000 patients, or 4,000 people with Down syndrome, and that is how most of this was brought to be. It has had lots of updates over the years based on newer research, or if newer things were added to the protocol, or newer versions of supplements were created. So back when TNI was originally started, or NuTriVene was originally created, there weren't even like methylated versions of vitamins that we know are necessary today for our kids. So you'll see like methylcobalamin and methyl tetrahydrofolate, which is folate, or what used to be folic acid in the protocol. It addresses the SOD1 with upregulation of catalase and glutathione that Alissa covered. So it has all the antioxidants to help with H2O2 and H2S that are causing a lot of oxidative stress. It covers some very other small minor mutations, not mutations, but overexpressions, underexpressions, and things like that. And then it addresses MTRR, MTHFR mutations that are very common in our kids. So lesson number 1 on the website on trismooth21research.org is why does my baby have Down syndrome? And that goes over how many mothers of parents with Down syndrome have MTHFR mutations. So this covers that mutation if your child has it. And then if you could go to the next one. Okay, so I originally had this in here because I do a long presentation on this, but I think Paige is going to go over the dosing and all of that, so you can skip that one. Okay, so this is the luteolin study. I just put this in here. I know Alissa covered a lot of the science. Luteolin was actually added to the most recent version of TNI, or the most recent version of NuTriVene. So you can see that it said that the title, luteolin induces hippocampal neurogenesis in the Down syndrome mouse model. We actually introduced it and trialed it in the group prior to this study because of other studies that Dixie had found. This was the first time that there had been anything associated with Down syndrome that was studied. So the group does actually do trials on new things based on research that's found. Dixie's typically the one who's running down research and finding out what might be the next best thing for our kids. Go to the next one. Okay, the polyphenol support formula. So this is the second one. So if you think of the primary issues in Down syndrome, the NuTriVene covers oxidative stress, which is obviously one of the biggest hallmarks of Down syndrome. Polyphenol support would cover the number 2, which is another really big issue, which is mitochondrial dysfunction. I'm sorry. Somebody grab me a water, please. My mouth just got really dry. Oh. Sorry, I was like tripping over my tongue. Okay. So back to the polyphenol support formula. It covers the second hallmark of issues in Down syndrome. So phase 1 is the oldest supplements that have been around the longest. They're the supplements that have the most research behind them. They're the supplements that predate our involvement in TNI. So when I came to learn about it, these supplements were all already part of TNI, the TNI protocol. So this covers the second issue, mitochondrial dysfunction. Alissa covers some of that. It reduces neurological inflammation associated with some of the genes. This is the one that has resveratrol in it, so it's going to help reduce that blood-brain barrier degradation, help reduce that risk of autoimmune disease, and help close up those leaky junctions in the gut. Go to the next one. Now we have some pictures of the bottles.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so there are two versions of the polyphenol support formula. There's the polyphenol support with green tea and the version without green tea. We can no longer make changes to this formula because there are so many other groups of people using it besides people with Down syndrome now. So because of some rules for the FDA, they had to lower EGCG in the polyphenol support formula. So you still have to add extra EGCG if you are using the version with EGCG. So I typically just say buy the version without EGCG since you have to add it separately anyways. That's my opinion, but it also makes it a lot easier when you're scheduling your supplements because you typically would dose this twice a day, and if it has EGCG, then you have to figure out, well, am I going to dose 4 times a day because it has to be separated from NuTriVene, and NuTriVene you're splitting the dose and dosing it twice a day and things like that. So with this one, I typically say for most people, you want to buy the polyphenol support without EGCG so you can dose it like morning and evening. You're dosing NuTriVene like morning, afternoon, and Paige will probably do some more timing things about that. So the next one would be EGCG. So obviously we still highly recommend using EGCG, even if you're not using the polyphenol support that has EGCG included. EGCG is probably the most studied supplement in Down syndrome in both humans and the Down syndrome mouse model. It does cover DYRK1 overexpression, which causes altered brain development, cognitive deficit, leads to Alzheimer's disease, and altered development of facial limb bones. So this is has been studied in very small kids to find out whether or not it does affect facial structure, and there have been studies showing that yes, it does. So for very young kids, I'm an advocate simply because our kids struggle so much with respiratory viruses, and if we can improve that facial structure so that they have, a little bit bigger nasal bridge, a little bit bigger sinuses, a little bit bigger eustachian tubes, that helps a lot with how they deal with respiratory viruses. This typically would be dosed 2 times per day. For most people, I would say they can only fit in 1 time per day because you'd have to dose it. You'd have to do a 4-dose schedule if you were to get two doses of this in, because it does have to be separated from NuTriVene by 4 hours. And the reason it has to be separated from NuTriVene is that it can inhibit folate absorption, and that's an important part of regulating Down syndrome as well.
Excuse me, it does what?
What?
Excuse me, it does what?
What are you asking?
What is that?
Oh, why are you separating it? Because it inhibits folate absorption. So we have the methyl tetrahydrofolate in NuTriVene, which it regulates use of the MTHFR mutation and things like that, and building red blood cells and all of those things. So it's important to make sure that you are not inhibiting that. We do recommend for both EGCG and curcumin to make sure that you know how your child's iron levels are. We don't suggest starting it if your child has anemia. Let's do the next one. Okay, so curcumin would be covering that third, what I would call hallmark in Down syndrome, which would be inflammation. That is its primary purpose in our kids is decreasing inflammation. It decreases or downregulates all of the inflammatory cytokines, and it also regulates APP, which is associated with Alzheimer's disease. It also downregulates a gene called JAK or JAK, and there are actually multiple studies happening right now on pharmaceutical versions of JAK inhibitors for rheumatoid arthritis, for regression in Down syndrome. So this is one of those natural options for regulating JAK. This is typically, it will be on the TNI calculator, which I think Paige will go over, and we do suggest giving this with some sort of fat, so yogurt, or adding a little extra virgin olive oil or something, because it is fat soluble. That's always a good idea with NuTriVene as well. There are fat soluble vitamins, but specifically for this one, we see a lot of younger kids with it just coming out. We go to the next one. All right, so this would be what you would be looking at for full phase 1 of the protocol. So if you couldn't do any other supplements and you could only afford a few, this is what I would suggest is phase 1 of the protocol. It's the oldest, it covers the biggest issues in Down syndrome, and it's been around the longest. So most people would feel most comfortable with those. You go to the next. And then there's phase 2. So these are the supplements that have been around less time. They've been around since Paige and I and Alyssa's involvement. I know Paige and I's kids have been in the trials for almost all of these. So I think Alyssa's has been for most of them as well. You go to the next one. So I think we introduced this one in 2018. Our kids were in the trials for that. So huperzine A and choline, this is the only time we introduce supplements together. So both huperzine A and choline are introduced together. If your child eats a lot of eggs, you don't really need to introduce choline. Like if they're eating them 4 or 5 times a week, you don't really need it. But most of the time you're going to be introducing choline as well. And so what it does is it is an acetylcholine esterase inhibitor. So acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter which is responsible for sending signals to muscles and glands and neurons and things like that. So if acetylcholinesterase is constantly destroying acetylcholine, then it is causing lots of issues with how your muscles and your glands function. So what we do is we inhibit that first with huperzine A, and then we give choline to provide choline so that you have the necessary products to create acetylcholine. So if you could go to the next one. So because our kids were part of the trials, it makes it a lot more exciting for me because I got to see everything that happened. So for me watching it, it was really astounding because my daughter was so young when she was in the trial. She was under 2 years old. But we saw rapid growth. I saw one kid that grew 2.7 inches in 4 weeks. My own daughter grew 1 inch in 4 weeks. And almost every younger kid, it induced a significant growth spurt. We did see even full-grown adults who jumped up maybe an inch or so in growth. That was obviously more rare. But the younger kids, almost every single one of them had a huge growth spurt. And then we had significant tooth eruption in the younger kids as well. So we know that a lot of the young kids are very delayed in dentition. So their teeth come in very late. They come in after 12 months. They have maybe up to 18 months for a lot of them, which really delays how much they're able to eat, how they're able to chew and things like that. So we've had teeth coming in all 4 and 5 teeth at a time. We saw normalized stooling for a lot of kids, so this was one of the primary reasons why this was actually being looked at for our kids, is because in the old Facebook group, the Trisomy 21 Research Facebook page, there was a child who died from a bowel infection. Dixie said, we can't have that happen anymore. We need to find out what can be a huge contributing factor, and this is what she came across in the research. So we have had a lot of kids stooling and their constipation resolve with using huperzine and choline. So we have seen increased physical strength. So could you think about how this affects muscles? If every single muscle in your body, every single muscle cell in your body needs acetylcholine to function, then you think about the stomach, the colon, even the intestines as it squeezes through. All of those are really muscles. So if you get more muscle tone simply by using this, it helps things move more quickly. We did see increased physical strength and then increased cognition and rate of learning for many of the kids as well. And in that, also when we first started huperzine and choline, we also started luteolin and rutin with that. Now luteolin and rutin is part of NuTriVene, so we don't add that separately anymore. But we also saw, I think with that one, increases in cognition and things like that. Apigenin. So apigenin is probably my favorite one to talk about, just simply because of the benefits I saw in my daughter. So apigenin actually inhibits the CBS gene. When this was introduced in late 2019, early 2020, we had never had a CBS inhibitor before. There were pharmaceutical CBS inhibitors, but we have never used those as part of the protocol because they typically interact with a lot of different things and they usually have lots of side effects. So there was never one that was ever introduced to the protocol. So this was the first time we ever had anything to inhibit that high levels of hydrogen sulfide that was being developed. So we saw lots of benefits when doing that, and then the overexpression of this gene also results in mitochondrial dysfunction and it affects ATP synthesis. So ATP is like the energy production in our cells. So if you think about it like that, then you will realize why we had some of the benefits in the next slide. But this is the only one that we do not dose daily, or we do not dose multiple times a day. So we dose this one every 2 to 3 days. It does have a 91-hour half-life. So typically for my daughter, I choose 2 to 3 days a week. When she was young, we only dosed Tuesday and Friday, because if we dosed any more than that, she would get super emotional. So we only did Tuesday and Friday. And then now she's gotten older, she handles Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So some of these, I wouldn't say that there's like a strict regimen that you have to do, except for, and Paige will go over that. But for something like this, if there's a little bit of openness for some things, you can sort of make your own decision. I know some of the doctors, and I know one of the doctors in Portugal, he has adults on Apigenin every day. So we only had issues with the younger kids doing it daily. So we just across the board are saying for 2 to 3 days for most people. Okay, so my daughter's also in the trials for this, and we saw significantly increased verbalization and longer sentences. So my really cool story about this one is that we had speech therapists, the same speech therapist since Ruben was like an infant. And she came to me one day and said, "What did you add? I know you added something because I know all the supplements that you're doing, and I know you did something because from last week to this week, there is a huge jump in the amount of words she's able to say at one time." So she went from like 4 to 5 words in a sentence to like 7 and 8 words in a sentence. And she was like, "There's nothing that happened between now and then. You had to have added something." And I was like, I'm really excited. I was like, yeah, I did. I added a new supplement. But then we had some issues with the timing and not realizing that she couldn't take it every day or even 4 or 5 times a week. So we had to back off, and then we lost those benefits, and then we got them back. So there was a huge up and down for us. But this is one of the reasons why it took me so long to realize that she started sweating for the first time in her life when we added Apigenin. So before, living in Florida is super hot. You have to be able to sweat. And for her, she would be outside and she would be miserable. She would be laying down. She would constantly be like red and overheating. So when she first started sweating, it started this like dampness under her arms, and we would pick her up out of her car seat. And then eventually it progressed to like beads of sweat around her hair. And I was the first person to notice it because I guess we started the trials when it was a different time of year, the rest of the United States. And I kept going to Dixie saying, "I feel like this caused my daughter to sweat." And Dixie was like, "Well, nobody else is reporting it." So eventually, I think after a year, I put it out to the larger group and I said, "This happened to my daughter. Did anybody else see this?" And it ended up being like a third of parents said that either, yes, they saw a significant increase in heat tolerance where they're not so miserable outside, or they saw sweating for the first time in their life. So for my daughter, this one probably improved her quality of life so much more because she was able to go outside and play with her sister and things like that. But we did see increases in cognition and gross motor gains, but the majority of what we saw was the sweating and then the longer sentences and things like that. Okay, so lycopene, Alissa talked a little bit about this one. It inhibits RCAN1, which is well, I said it's a gene we discussed earlier, but I have a presentation like Alissa's as well. But it's a very powerful free radical scavenger, and I like to think of RCAN1 as like a regulator gene. It affects the expression of many other genes because of how it works. So if you think of it like throwing a pebble in a pond and it rippling out, this gene alone can cause metabolic chaos. So this is a really important one to inhibit. So I want you to know that so that you don't think it was removed from NuTriVene because it's not a good supplement. So it was removed from NuTriVene simply because of cost, because it was going to become very expensive for them to source a powdered version because it's better in a liquid. It's very sticky, and it caused them to have a lot of like excipients and flow agents and things like that in NuTriVene. Also because a lot of young moms were complaining that their kids were like allergic to tomatoes and it caused them to break out. So, some parents are starting this one a little bit later because of that, but it's still a very important supplement. So hesperidin, this is the last one. It is a G protein and potassium current inhibitor. It is a GERK1/2 inhibitor as well. Previously, a lot of the adults were like taking Prozac and things like that because it's a GERK1/2 inhibitor as well. Obviously, we don't like to suggest medications if we don't have to, but some of the adults really needed something like that. GERK1/2 doesn't really become a huge issue until the kids start to grow up. So a lot of them are getting on Prozac because of that. Now we use hesperidin. It became a really big thing during COVID because it inhibits TMPRSS2, which is a protease that COVID-19 replicates through. So I'm sure all of you guys saw the articles that went around that our kids were 10 times more likely to die from COVID because of this protease. So if that's still a concern for you, I don't know if it is or not, but hesperidin does inhibit that protease. So it sort of puts our kids in a more even playing field for this virus. And a lot of the supplements, they inhibit a lot of different viruses to begin with. So aside from all of the benefits for them having the overexpressed genes, like resveratrol can inhibit lots of different viruses. EGCG can inhibit lots of different viruses, hesperidin as well. So there's a lot of benefits to these outside of just to their genome. Okay, so these are the things that we saw in the trial groups. This also had a lot of benefits for speech, and then lesser benefits to the anxiety, compulsion issues, and things like that. The regular dosing is on the calculator. If you are using it for COVID, I would say basically double the dose and then do it every 4 to 6 hours. So this is sort of like at a glance, the supplements, there are 9, so there would be, I count huperzine and choline as 2 separate ones. I think Alissa counted them together. But phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1, most important, that's what you should focus on if that's all you can afford or that's all you can handle. It can become very overwhelming if you think about the number of supplements, especially if you see like a schedule and you're thinking, like looking at the TNI calculator and you're looking at maybe NuTriVene in the morning and NuTriVene in the afternoon and then polyphenol in the morning and polyphenol in the evening and then curcumin. And you see all these supplements all listed out and it gets like a little overwhelming. So what I say is focus on phase 1, buy those, and then say, I'm going to start with NuTriVene. And that's the only thing that you focus on until you get that down. If it takes you 3 months to get that down, so be it. Do it until you feel comfortable with it. If you become overwhelmed and you stop, you can always come back to it, but I have found that if you take it slow and you just get comfortable with one, then you eventually feel comfortable with adding a second one. And then you eventually feel comfortable adding a third, and then a fourth. And so it's something that you build slowly. And obviously, Alissa said you never start anything, with more than one at a time. All of it is one at a time anyways. So you focus on the one, and then slowly move on to the next. Okay, so I don't know if somebody wants to take a picture of these. I can't answer these now because I'm not going to have the time to do it because Paige has her portion. But if you want these questions answered at the end, these are typically questions that I would answer in like my online webinars that I do. And these are very common questions that most people have. So if you find one that you want, or maybe you can come back to it later if they decide they want to ask for these. But these are usually very common questions that parents want answered, or they feel uncomfortable with a certain thing and they want to know some of these things. So I think that's the last one.
You've got 5 more minutes if you want to answer these questions.
The second question in particular,
What is that?
the detox. Do we need to detox our children before beginning the protocol?
The answer to that is it depends. Sometimes it is best to detox your child before starting the protocol. If your child is in regression, 100% you need to probably detox before starting the protocol. If they are not in regression, I suggest being on the protocol first. And the reason for that is that the NuTriVene itself is going to have lots of benefits to methylation and making sure that you have the correct supplements in place, and also inhibiting genes to decrease that oxidative stress, things like that. You want to decrease some of that stress on the body before you increase other stress, because detox is stressful to the body. So if you can decrease the stress, I always suggest doing that first. The polyphenol support also, I think it's really important to close up the blood-brain barrier first before extracting all these toxins. So I think that the polyphenol support is really important to have in place first. So EGCG, curcumin, like phase 1 typically I would say I would want in place first before detoxing. But regression, they can't handle the supplements usually until they detox. So they can't handle regulation of their genes. And that's typically because if there's such a buildup of toxins, heavy metals, different things in their body. And there's different causes, I think, of regression, but and we could have a whole meeting on regression and detox and things like that. But most people, I would say, they don't need to detox unless they had significant toxic load. So for that, I would say if your child has had many different surgeries, or the full vaccine schedule, including plus all of those many different surgeries, they may need to be detoxed first. It really just depends. I think that's this is my one answered.
Or it's not on there, but like for adults, it's recommended to do the detox first, right?
For adults with Down syndrome?
Yeah.
Unless they've had, and you would have to be the judge of whether or not you feel that's necessary. I still think that if they haven't had any regression and they are doing well and they haven't had what you would consider like a significant toxic load, I would still think that NuTriVene and the polyphenol and things like that should come first, simply because they need that support before introducing all these other toxins.
What is it? What's the detox? Is that something you sell, or supplements you give them, or?
Yeah, so Alissa covered a little bit about it, is what she was calling the lymphatic detox, and that is what we're discussing here about. That's what the lymphatic detox is, the brain detox that she was talking about. So it's not like a single product or anything. NuTriVene doesn't actually sell it. It's supplements a list of supplements that you would buy separately. So it's like glutathione, lycopene, blueberry polyphenol, vitamin C, melatonin, ALA, fish oil. Yeah.
We talked about maybe, since that would be like, again, almost another whole presentation, that maybe next month or a couple of months, depending on what we have scheduled already, to do that as a Do You Have a Minute one night, that the ladies agreed that they would come and go over the lymphatic detox. Guys can kind of have some time to kind of walk away, look over some of this stuff, and then see, like, ready to learn something else new.
When you say lymphatic detox, you're talking about just detoxing the cell waste from the brain, or are you talking about detoxing heavy metals and extraneous chemicals that got stuck in there because of whatever your kid has been exposed to throughout the years?
Yeah, so it is primarily a detox for the brain, but it would be detoxing all of that, and that's sort of the purpose of ALA. ALA can actually pull out toxins from even fat cells, which is what something that fat cells actually lock heavy metals and toxins in, but it can actually extract them out of fat cells. So ALA is alpha-lipoic acid. It's a very powerful detox agent, and that's the primary. There's a lot of antioxidants and things like that, but ALA pulls it out. I would say glutathione is the primary thing we use to bind to the things that are being pulled out. So aluminum, mercury, cadmium, things like that. Glutathione is great for binding to things like that. But then there are also other antioxidants and free radical scavengers and things like that in the detox. And then we also suggest Fiji water or something that has silica in it. Silica binds to aluminum.
Do you have any thoughts? Did you today ever thought to like liposomal, like versions of it instead of powder or capsules, into the liquid that the body would absorb like easier and faster?
Liposomal is typically known for being better absorbed. There isn't a liposomal version of any portion of the protocol, not from NuTriVene or anything like that, that International Nutrition sells. For some of the detox supplements, you can buy some liposomal supplements for that. Like glutathione will come in liposomal, vitamin C will come in liposomal, things like that.
Would a person doing the growth hormone treatment can do
of any issue with growth hormone. I've known lots of people using growth hormone who use the protocol. Okay.
Okay, so we can answer, we'll have some more time for questions when Paige is finished, but we're gonna transition so we can, have everybody get their presentation done, and then we'll have some extra time at the end for any questions for any of the witnesses. So thank you, Sarah.
Okay, that was a lot of science for both of them, you guys. Take a big breath. You did it. You made it. Back in school. I am not going to go over hardly any science, really, because I just want you guys to let that simmer a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the practical applications of this, which I think is probably all where we're at. You're buying in, you're understanding where this makes a difference. My son was up here. He does have some capsules if you guys want to see him swallow some capsules. He calls it his magic trick. It's actually really cool. He's so confident in his ability to swallow capsules now that he has tried swallowing them without water. To which my response was, please don't do that. That's not safe. But he can do it. So don't limit your kids. I know some of you might have eating problems and different issues that prevent you from thinking this is doable for you. For example, I'm going to talk about us because this is my personal experience. None of this is medical advice anybody's giving you tonight. So all we have is our anecdotal experiences. He was failure to thrive. He failed his APGAR tests. He had fetal hydrops. He had fluid everywhere in his brain, heart problems. He was not looking good. I was told I would die, or he would die, or we would both die. And this lovely guy in the blue hat over here, he had to hear that and still survived. And now he actually does the morning supplements, believe it or not. When we got married, he didn't eat a vegetable. Now he's eating vegetables and giving supplements. It is possible. Miracles happen, you guys. They really, truly do. And I say that because for someone to buy in that never even ate vegetables to be like, oh no, we are doing the supplements in the morning. Like, do you see like the impact that that has to change not only our son's health, but our entire family's health? Like, we all are so much more health conscious because of this. So if Tristan can learn to take supplements and move from failure to thrive to where he's at, I know progress is possible for all of us in this area. So don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like it's not for you, because if you want to do it, there's a way to get there. Okay, I'll start now officially. Go to the next slide. I'm from the Caribbean. I grew up in Trinidad, so I have a little island flavor and spice, which is fun sometimes not so much. But I grew up a little bit holistic. I never ate any cold sandwiches, so when I moved to America and I got a sandwich, I didn't know what to do because I was so spoiled living in Trinidad. It was all hot lunches, all hot food all the time. So that's my background with why I started cooking and started forcing vegetables down his throat, because this to me was what the standard was. That to say, what you set in your home as your standard is going to be what your children feel is okay. I can say this now because I have a 5-year-old who flipped everything that I thought I knew on its butt. He does not like to eat vegetables, but when he cooks with us, he feels like he's part of the story, and he ate a salad over there. He ate the salad. Alissa saw him. He ate the salad. So not falling into the trap of American culture is XYZ. We give mac and cheese, chicken nuggets. That is a huge thing. And I understand we're not all Amish. I work with the Amish community sometimes, and I actually envy their insulation of American culture that can be toxic to our families. And I think it's awesome, but we don't live there. You probably might live in the country, but you still drive past a Walmart and a Chick-fil-A. So it's really hard to think in terms of black and white with this, and I don't want you guys to do that because it's not sustainable. We have to leave room for a gray area of, maybe we're gonna get Chick-fil-A today, maybe we'll skip supplements today. You know, my cup is full, I can't think about one more thing. Your mental health comes first, and if you do what you can do, you make little baby steps of progress, you'll get there, your child will get there. And you might even have your 5-year-old that didn't eat a vegetable for 4 years of their life eating salad. But it's all the standards you set in your home, and I learned that growing up in the Caribbean. I eat some of like the grossest, weirdest food, and my kids are like surprised that I do it, and then they want to also do it. So we also do mac and cheese and chicken nuggets and Chick-fil-A. Next slide, please. This was just talking a little bit about Down syndrome. We can skip past this one.
feel like you guys have heard enough about that. This just is going over the extra chromosome, extra genes, massive changes in biochemistry and structure in various parts of the body. For various parts of the body, we've noticed so many differences in Tristan in his facial structure. Sara had talked about green tea, and I wanted to reiterate that there's a difference in bone formation in their face that happens. I know you guys see like the typical flat nasal bridge, everything's flat here, and it causes a lot of congestion because those airways, the sinus passages, are so flat and compressed. Tristan was one of those kids. I think it's a couple slides down. Sorry, I'm gonna make you jump around, Robin. I love you. Yeah, it's a little bit down there. You'll see his picture. There it is. So he can wear glasses now, you guys. He can wear glasses. That is a real life application of how the facial structure changes. He was 2. Actually, the mom that took this picture, this is a cool story I'll share. The mom that took this picture, Jenny, got me into doing TNI, and then I shared, and then Sara was at a baby group, and then she got into TNI. I said, you gotta come join this group. You gotta hear about this. I think it might be something worth doing. We started with Tristan. He had such a rough journey that it started helping him. And then she started it with Reagan. I don't know if it was before or after the infantile spasms. Yeah, so it was really cool to see all of that come together, and like somebody shared it with me and I freely shared it with them. And then, I mean, not everybody's gonna be happy that you're sharing it, because I know the general consensus is that we just accept them as they are, and you are accepting your child as you are. You're just helping them reach their full potential, especially if you're having a lot of issues with sinus drainage and just a lot of allergies. Changing their diet really truly does help, and adding in a lot of these that regulate the genes and upregulate and downregulate and act as antagonists. Okay, can we go back? Okay, we can go forward. Okay, we can go forward again. So you can take a little screenshot of this. These are the main genes, proteins, enzymes, and factors, I guess. You could say that they all talked about. I don't want to go over all of it. It's so good being here listening to it. It took me, I joined the group when Tristan was 4 months old after he had a really bad adverse reaction, and I stuck around in there and I thought, these people are really passionate about certain things. Like, either they're absolutely insane or there's something to it. But I'm gonna hang out in the group, I'm gonna see what's going on, I'm gonna suss it out. And I started hearing stories of somebody, oh, my daughter was really constipated, she's doing better. My daughter had really dark circles, they're sleeping better, they're resveratrol with their allergies. And I said, okay, there's something to this. Let me see if I can put all of the ingredients in my cart and do it without the assistance of NuTriVene. And it was like $1,200. And Gabe was like, my husband was like, you're insane, please don't do that. And I did it. And I said, okay, well, I guess they are providing this at a reasonable cost. It's not an MLM, it's not like that. It is a company that is for profit, but they're not providing it at an unreasonable cost, which is a big deal to me, because at the time I had stopped working and we were just trying to figure out how that was gonna go. Because again, my son is failure driving, it would take an hour to take 2 ounces of milk. So he couldn't even go to daycare at that point. We had to take care of him. And that was a huge deal. I didn't want to make expensive urine, as several doctors and geneticists have told me. You shouldn't do it. You're making expensive urine. Just put him on a multivitamin. And it was a tough choice when you're financially in a little bit of a grind, if you will. You don't know what to do. Do you make expensive urine? Like, how long can we do this? So Gabe, I don't remember, we gave it like 6 months. We'll see. For 6 months, we'll spend the money. And he was so tiny because he was not doing well with feeding that it actually lasted way longer. The smaller your child is, the supplement bottle will last a lot longer. So you also have to think about that. You're not going to incur a giant cost when they're little. It's when they grow, you incur the giant cost as they go through a bottle every month or 2, stuff like that. So you'll have some time if you start when they're little. And we did. And as we did that, we started noticing little changes, like Alissa said, like a light went off, like he just seems more alert, more awake. For example, today I asked his new OT what she notices, and I'm going to keep her name confidential, I promised her. because she does treat other kids with Down syndrome as well. And I asked her, what do you think, as a new person to the field in pediatric OT, working with children with disabilities, what do you see that's different with Tristan? I mean, I know he's super cute, and he's really funny, and he dresses really cool, and I know there's all those things about it. His hair's cut just a certain way that he likes. But what do you see on a grander scheme of things? Like, what do you see that's positive with him that makes him different? She said his reaction time overall, his face is less inflamed. She can tell that we went recently 3 weeks without any supplements because I forgot to order. And his face did get really inflamed. It started just looking puffier just all around. And I'm like, gosh, that's crazy. We start the supplements 2 weeks later. I'm like, oh, I guess that's what it was. We stopped. And it's okay to do that. Sometimes I experiment and I see how much, because you need to remind yourself. I don't know about you, but sometimes when you do something so much it becomes a habit and you stop seeing the value in it. And so I'll run my little experiment, which was accidental because I forgot to order. And I was like, oh, this is really good for him. And for him personally, you can see the difference in his face. So, it lost. Thank you. So you can see the difference in his face, and she said he doesn't seem to fatigue the same as his peers, his attention to task, his desire to complete to the expectation of the task, and putting concepts together, his resilience to stressors and frustration, and he has a lower irritation threshold, which I don't know that I agree with that because he gets pretty irritated with me. And that was kind of eye-opening for somebody that's new to the field, that has fairly recently met him in that professional capacity. And this is true, like other people were saying about this speech therapist. When I was pregnant, I was very, very sick with my second child. And his speech therapist would always say, what did you do? He seems out of it today. Like, what's going on? Did he not sleep last night? Like, what's up? Like, he's just not engaging to the same level that he is. And I would ashamed to say that, oh yeah, I forgot to give it to him. It's been like 4 days. And for some kids, they don't need it at all. There's families that are part of the foundation that they've never given their kid a single supplement. But to me, that just means that their bodies do a better job at compensating for the biochemical chaos in their bodies. And I know personally, I have my own issues with neurodivergence, so it's not a surprise that my child is going to have a harder time because I'm passing my genetic traits outside of Down syndrome, which I think we forget about a lot. Like, you have your own genetic traits you're passing down. For example, my child is Caucasian, but he has a vitamin D receptor mutation, a single nucleotide polymorphism, a SNP, that does not allow him to absorb vitamin D, even though he is Caucasian and he's not tan. It's typically something you only see in tan populations because I would absorb vitamin D way too much. So where I was geographically located, God decided to say, hey, you don't need to absorb that much vitamin D. Your ancestors were out by the equator. You don't need that much. Tristan is chronically vitamin D low. He could be out in the sun every day, all day, and he will still be low because he has that gene, which comes from me, not my husband, and I know that because I have that gene. And so to say that we're not also passing those things down and how that interconnects to the Down syndrome biochemistry, that's also something to factor. And I think that's a big reason in explaining, if you will, why some kids can do better without any supplements. And other kids, they absolutely need it. For me, I would say my son absolutely needs it, and so we're gonna do what we can and ensure that he has it for the rest of his life. And we've actually worked a plan with whoever's taking him that they all know. Everybody has already interacted with the supplement routine, and they're all well aware. And they've seen him on days where, when I was pregnant, where I've forgotten to give it to him, and they're like, wow, this isn't mumbo jumbo, there's something to it. He's just a little bit sharper, a little bit more on his A game. And he really enjoys being on his A game. He will gladly take his supplements and he'll gladly tell you, oh, I forgot my pills. And I'm like, okay, you forgot your pills, sorry buddy. And then we went back this morning because I forgot to give him the apigenin because he does not tolerate apigenin well. And that's something that can happen where you start a supplement and your child does not tolerate it well. Can we go to the next slide? This is where we talk about the first week, this is an example, you don't have to do it this way, but this is just an example. You can start low and slow, pick one supplement, and start one supplement at a time. Working up towards the full dose, keep track of behaviors, sleep disturbances, and anything different, positive or negative. None of this is a magic pill. I want to dispel that. It's not a magic pill, it's not a quick fix, but it does help. And just because it helps one person, it doesn't mean that your journey is going to be equally the same, positive or negative. Just like we experienced a lot of different things when we did Apogen, and he was extremely irritable, extremely emotional, so we stopped it, and I waited for him to get a little older. But he started sweating anyway on his own, so I was like, okay, cool. And then we stopped, and then Huperzine for him is one of the supplements that I know we had talked about. A side effect for him is excess urination. So he's potty trained, but when he takes Huperzine, he has a lot of leakage. However, I took him off in March, I want to say, and he ended up getting a very distended belly, even though he was going to the bathroom every single morning, and at least one time a day. The peristalsis, which is the movement of the cilia?
It's the smooth muscle.
The smooth muscle movement in the gut. There's like little hairy things that push everything down. It's a really cool visual image, but I don't have it on here. But it all goes down, and it's going pretty well, but when you take away that supplement that encourages that, everything slows down. So even though he's pooping every day, not all of it's coming out every day. So over time, it built up, built up, built up. We ended up going to the urologist and trying to figure out why is he still leaking. They said that we needed to go for an emergency x-ray because all he could see was poop. And I'm like, no, he goes every day. What are you talking about? Not my son, he goes every day. He had, after the x-ray, he had poop about 3 inches from his heart. That's why his stomach was so distended. So immediately, what do? I give him the herbal laxatives that we know. Swiss Chris is a great one if you have laxative problems or bowel movement problems with your child. Swiss Chris is really good. Gave him some Swiss Chris. We cleared him out and then immediately put him back on Huperzine because the cost of getting backed up and having that much toxicity in your gut is not worth the benefit, you know? It's just not, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna take him off of Huperzine because of the urination. We will deal with it. And I found some really great ways to deal with it, which we can talk about later.
Sorry, can you repeat the word Swiss what?
Swiss Chris. K-R-I-S-S. I read your mind.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so that is one thing that really, again, sometimes we experiment and it doesn't go well. And I experimented and it went horribly. And I'm just very thankful that I followed my gut with something's wrong. He should not be struggling this much. Because theoretically, if the Huperzine was causing the main urination problem, you take it away, the urination should get better. But in the case, it shares the same nerve as the anal sphincter. So it was compressing the urination gland. The poop was compressing the urination gland, compressing the anal sphincter, ruining everything. So now, yes, he still has leakage problems, but it's far better, and we understand the cost of cutting that out for him is too great. So when I say this is my case, this is my case, this is what happened to us. Some people have never had their kids on Huperzine, and their kids are just fine, they have a 6-pack. You know, it's really individual when it comes to how sensitive your children are to supplements. And the only way to find out how much it helps your kid is to start, and then when you take it away between ordering or if you do experiments like I do, unintentionally, you see that, okay, maybe that was a bad idea. And I think that's one of the ways to empower you as a parent in taking control into your hands. Like, you are the scientist, you are the person in charge here in how it gets run, because a lot of doctors that we've gone to have said the expensive P comment, and now looking back, he will be 9 in January. He's 76 pounds and he is up to my armpit. I'm really short, so it's not that great of an accomplishment, but for having Down syndrome, he's like off the charts for height. So I think that that is something that is very surprising for me. I would not have expected to see that from my child, let alone a child with this disability that the stature isn't what it should be. So we continue and we march on. Give it a next slide. And this is a sample supplement schedule. This is, I don't have any weight on here or anything, I just put a sample one up that we do. This was for, looks like this was for a little kid, probably like 40 pounds. So it's morning, afternoon, and night. You have the dosing opportunities up to 4 times a day. And that's something that you would want to do if you can fit it in your schedule. However, if your child is in school or daycare or you're not with them, I understand that's very challenging to try to get those supplements in them. So you can do morning and then afternoon when they get home from school and night, which is what we did for a very long time. And that was the best we could do. And I thought, the best I can do is going to be better than nothing. If the option is to don't do anything at all or try to fit things in the best we can, that's the best we can do it. And the start guide, they've already gone over all of this. We can quickly breeze through this. The NuTriVene, I think this is phase 1, and then the polyphenol green tea extract and the Longvita curcumin. Longvita curcumin and green tea happen to be my favorite two in this because those are the ones that I see the biggest difference with for Tristan. Except for right now, he's actually at a healthy, really healthy spot right now where he hasn't had curcumin for probably 2 weeks. And so far so good, but it helps with mucus production as well. So when he's in school, I really try to give it to him morning and night because it helps so much with that, with any little bug they pick up at school for him, or when he's sick, I load him up on it. I will say for curcumin, we've experienced a lot of reflux with it if they do currently have reflux. So if you have, I don't know how many people have little ones. Anybody have little ones? Okay, a couple. So if they have reflux, curcumin can be a little dicey, as can lycopene. Tristan experienced a lot of reflux, and then reflux comes out red. So it can be scary if you've never experienced that before. Red reflux is usually not good, it's gastritis, but it's just the lycopene if they have reflux. It's not actually scary. And then the phase 2, they've already gone over. The huperzine and choline, which is now, it wasn't my favorite, but now because I see how much of a difference it makes, it's my favorite. He also was one of the children that had really good dentition immediately following that, and his speech therapist would say all the time how, oh my gosh, he's got another bump. Oh my gosh, he's got another bump. And he had no teeth for his birthday. I think he had his first birthday, he had one that was trying so very hard to come out and it just couldn't do it. And then we started the huperzine and it was literally like wildfire, just all the teeth just started coming out. However, now I need to find a supplement because I think I probably told a couple of you, his teeth don't come out all the way. Like his roots don't dissolve. Now his teeth are too good. So we have to figure out a way to get his teeth to dissolve so we can lose them. But that is a better problem to have than not having any teeth. So we roll with it. And then there's the apigenin, the lycopene, and the hesperidin. I also really like hesperidin for him. He also has autism. And we notice his anxiety and OCD are a lot less with hesperidin and luteolin, which is on the add-on protocol. So if you have autism, there are certain supplements that help with that a lot. Like he skin picks, and the luteolin, I think my husband would agree, it almost single-handedly reduces the incidence of skin picking for him. We can go to the next one. And there he is, that's the difference. We've also done the palate expander last year, September we started it, and then we finished it in April. His smile is great and he's doing awesome, and I want to see everyone's kid do awesome. They're all awesome and amazing all on their own, but I know there's another level to health and wellness that we have yet to break through because science is 20 years behind on the research. And I have a very close friend that's running research for a giant pharmaceutical company that they found something that can change the Alzheimer's landscape, and nothing's happening with it. And she called me crying, upset about it, and I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, this happens every time. Things just don't go all the way through, even though she's somebody that I trust personally, and she's just like, it's as vague as possible that she could tell me. And she's like, it's not gonna go through. So what we have control over is taking the supplements. We don't have control over the pharmaceutical companies and how they operate. Not that I like how they operate half the time, but what we do have control over is the supplements. And I can say doing that for us personally was the biggest game changer. One of the things that were a game changer in setting up was these. Have you guys seen these before? a little pill container. I have 2 to give away. I have 2. Are you so excited? This will help jumpstart you. This is where I am at in life. Instead of giving away like vacations, I'm giving away pill boxes. Woo! Didn't see that one coming. This says spring loaded. So you pop the top and it comes out, which is much more convenient than the one that I had. So these help because it has morning, noon, evening, and bedtime. So you're able to do the 4 doses, or if you're not doing 4 doses, you just fill them less. One of the good things that I thought about was when I used these, I felt like I had more control over everything with his health. I could set it up, and this was when we were trying to get my husband on board with all of this. And he was like, this is overwhelming. There's like 1,200 bottles here. What am I supposed to do with this? I'm like, okay, so if I do this, are you comfortable putting some of this in some applesauce? And then I had a chocolate super greens that I would mix in there, so it tasted chocolatey, applesaucey, and it was still kind of gross. I don't know if you smelled like a bottle of a really strong multivitamin, but it smells pretty bad. It smells bad. But when you mix it with chocolate and cinnamon and applesauce, it kind of mutes the smell and the taste. Put it in a sorbet, put it in yogurt, put it in non-dairy yogurt. However you can get it in for them, that's how you need to get it in. And so doing it in here and then mixing it in that, and then teaching him how to swallow capsules. Those are the big game changers for us. So now I don't have to worry about splitting it, and I will round up. If it says give him 1 capsule is 4 doses, I will sprinkle it, because that's too much. 1/4 of a capsule is too much. It would be a little bit overdosing. Not that there is overdosing, because Alissa loves to talk about that. Ask her that question. Ask her what overdosing is, megadosing. Our dietary requirements barely keep us away from scurvy, so overdosing is really not overdosing when you put it in that context. So, for that, I probably try to split it up, but now we're at the point where he's at 75% of a capsule, and I'll just give him the whole capsule. That's okay. So now we can do that. So you won't be using these forever, but do you guys want to ask them a question to give it away? Go for it.
Challenge.
What question you got?
Oh my gosh.
Can you name 1 gene? Okay, what 2 supplements have to be separated?
Together or separate?
Separated.
Oh, the one that has the iron. What is it? Hyper?
NuTriVene and ECGD. Yeah, the one they have to keep away from.
Okay, who gets it?
Oh, she said it. I get it.
That's okay. She didn't give us the.
Well, she said iron.
Oh, this
She
one.
said NuTriVene and
Okay.
ECGD.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I've got a question. What is the gene product of SOD1? Oh, raise your hand, so we can go, Jared. What is it?
I'm not throwing. You know me. I can't throw that. I'm married to a basketball player. I'm not a basketball player. I was in marching band. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. I hope this was a little less stressful than you thought it would be.